The rain was coming down hard that night, drumming against the windows as if it wanted to break in. The wind howled through the corners of the house, and the lights flickered now and then, threatening to go out. It was nearly 11:30 when Robert Harris opened the front door, leaving a trail of water across the marble floor. His soaked overcoat weighed heavy on his shoulders, but the real weight came from days of endless meetings and nights of little to no sleep. He climbed the stairs in silence, his firm steps echoing through the hallway. Only one thought ran through his mind: check if his twin boys, Lucas and Liam, were finally asleep. In the past months, it was rare to find the house peaceful. Since their mother's death, the twins had been restless, waking up at night with nightmares, refusing to sleep alone, and driving away every nanny who tried to care for them. When he reached the door to the master bedroom, Robert stopped. It was slightly open, and a soft light spilled into the hallway. His brow furrowed. No one was supposed to be in there. He pushed the door slowly on. What he saw made his blood boil. In the center of the bed, Olivia Carter, the new nanny hired just 3 weeks ago, was lying down. Not alone, but with Lucas on one side and Liam on the other, all three under the blanket. His heart raced. To Robert, this was an unforgivable invasion. "What the hell do you think you're doing in my bed?" His voice sliced through the silence like a blade, heavy with anger and disbelief. Olivia's eyes flew open, startled. There was no guilt in them, only surprise. She sat up slowly, trying not to wake the boys, who were sleeping deeply, their breathing soft and in sync. Lucas clutched a teddy bear, while Liam was curled up against her arm. "Mr. Harris, I can explain," she began, her voice low and calm, but he didn't let her. "Explain nothing. This is unacceptable." He took a step forward, his face tense. Liam stirred, starting to cry softly. Lucas rubbed his nose, and a thin trickle of blood appeared, another of the frequent nosebleeds he got when nervous. Olivia instinctively reached out to comfort them, but Robert, blinded by anger, didn't think twice. The sharp sound of a slap echoed through the room. The impact made Olivia step back, her hand flying to her cheek. She didn't cry, she didn't scream. She just looked at him, her eyes steady, as if trying to understand what could make a man act that way. "You're fired. Get your things and leave my house now." His voice was cold and final. For a moment, she didn't move. Then she glanced at the boys again. They had already drifted back into peaceful sleep, as if the weight of the world had been lifted from their small shoulders. She leaned in and pressed a silent kiss to each forehead. Without a word, she picked up her shoes, walked past Robert, and went downstairs. In the living room, the housekeeper, Mrs. Turner, looked at her in shock. The red mark on Olivia's face said everything. But Olivia didn't explain. She just stepped out the door and disappeared into the rain. Upstairs, Robert stood frozen, staring at the bed. For the first time in months, his sons were sleeping deeply, not from exhaustion, not from crying themselves to sleep, and not because of medication, just peacefully. And he had just driven away the one person who made that happen. Robert didn't sleep that night. He tossed and turned, the sound of the rain outside matching the storm in his chest. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Olivia's face calm, steady even after he'd struck her, and worse, he saw the twins, resting peacefully for the first time in months. Without him, by dawn, the house was unusually quiet. He walked down the hallway toward the boys' room and peeked inside. Lucas and Liam were still asleep, their faces relaxed, as if the nightmares that usually haunted them had vanished. The sight made his throat tighten. For months, he'd hired nanny after nanny, 14 in total. Therapists, sleep specialists, pediatricians, all had failed to break the cycle of fear and sleepless nights. But Olivia, this soft-spoken stranger, had managed it in just 3 weeks, and he had thrown her out. Feeling a knot in his stomach, Robert returned to the master bedroom. The bed was still unmade from the night before, and as he sat on its edge, something caught his attention, a folded piece of paper on the nightstand. He picked it up. The handwriting was neat but unpolished. "If you can't stay for them, at least don't push away the ones who will." Robert stared at the words for a long moment, the meaning sinking in deeper with each second. He placed the note down and noticed something else. On a small wooden stool against the wall lay a worn sketchbook. He hesitated before opening it. Inside were simple drawings, rough but full of warmth. One showed the two boys holding hands under a large tree. Another depicted a tall house with too many windows. But one drawing stopped him cold. A figure, sitting between the boys, arms outstretched like wings. Below it, A small caption, "The one who stays." Robert closed the sketchbook slowly, pressing his palms against it as if it could somehow bring her back. Shame seeped into him like ink in water. He had misjudged her completely. He had reacted like a man protecting walls instead of opening doors. Downstairs, Mrs. Turner was preparing breakfast when Robert appeared. She glanced at him briefly, her usual polite expression replaced by something sharper. "Sir," she said, not quite hiding her disapproval, "the boys have been calmer since she came. You should know that." He didn't respond. Instead, he walked to the window and looked out at the grey morning. Somewhere out there, Olivia was starting her day without them, without him even trying to hear her side. The rest of the morning passed in a haze. He attended a virtual meeting, but his mind wasn't on quarterly reports or stock numbers. It kept circling back to one thought. She stayed because they needed her, and I sent her away. By afternoon, he found himself dialing a number he didn't even remember saving. It rang twice before a soft voice answered, "Mr. Harris." But Robert froze. He didn't know what to say not, yet all he knew was that he had to make this right. Somehow, Robert spent the next 2 days trying to focus on work, but every time he saw the twins, the guilt sharpened like glass in his chest. Lucas had gone back to waking up in the middle of the night, crying for no reason he could explain. Liam had started refusing his meals again. The fragile progress they'd made with Olivia was already slipping away. On the third morning, Robert couldn't take it anymore. He sat in his office with Olivia's sketchbook in front of him, flipping through the pages again. The simple drawings told more than words ever. Each one was a quiet snapshot of connection, safety, and trust. She had understood the boys in a way he never had. "Mrs. Turner," he called from the doorway. "Do you know where Olivia is working now?" The housekeeper hesitated. "I might, but are you going to apologize, sir?" Robert frowned. "That's none of your concern." "It is," Mrs. Turner replied softly, "because it's the boys' concern. And right now, they need someone who sees them. I hope you're ready to be that someone too." Her words hit deeper than he expected. After a pause, she handed him a small slip of paper with an address scribbled on it. "You didn't get this from me," she added. The address led him to the edge of the city, to a modest brick building with a faded sign reading Community Learning Center. The parking lot was cracked, weeds growing through the pavement, but the sound of laughter drifted from an open window. Robert stepped inside and followed the sound. At the far end of a bright room, he saw her Olivia crouched beside a whiteboard, erasing a few crooked letters from a spelling lesson. Around her sat a small group of teenage girls, their notebooks sprawled across the floor, their laughter bubbling through the air. Olivia was laughing too, her voice lighter than he remembered. There was still a shadow of pain behind her eyes, but here, she seemed unburdened. She didn't see him at first, and he found himself holding his breath, not wanting to break the moment. One of the girls noticed him and nudged Olivia. She looked up, the laughter fading into a quiet, steady gaze. For a heartbeat, neither of them spoke. Then Robert cleared his throat. "Olivia," he began, softer than he intended. "I need to talk to you." She stood, dusting chalk from her hands. "About what, Mr. Harris?" "About the boys," he said. "About everything. I was wrong." The room went quiet. The girls exchanged curious glances before slipping out, leaving them alone. Robert took a step closer. "I shouldn't have reacted the way I did. I didn't understand. I didn't even try to." Olivia studied him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. "You're right, you didn't." He nodded, swallowing the lump in his throat. "But I want to make it right. I need you back." Her eyebrows lifted slightly. "You need me, or they need me." "They need you," he admitted. "And I think maybe I do too." Olivia didn't answer immediately. She crossed her arms, tilting her head. "If I come back, there will be conditions." Robert felt the faintest flicker of hope. "Name them." Robert didn't hesitate. "Name them," he repeated, his voice steady, though his heart raced. He knew this was his one chance to bring Olivia back, not just for Lucas and Liam, but for the quiet part of himself that couldn't stop replaying the moment he sent her away. Olivia crossed her arms, her gaze fixed on him. "First," she began, "no cameras in the boys' rooms. I know you think it's for their safety, but it teaches them they have no privacy, that they're always being watched." Robert frowned. "There aren't any." "There were," she interrupted firmly. "The last nanny told me about them, and I disabled them." He blinked, caught off guard. "They were for security," he muttered. "They were for control." she countered, and trust can't grow in a cage. He hesitated, then gave a slow nod. Fine. No cameras. Second, she continued, they eat dinner at the table with you. No phones, no laptops, no work calls. Every night, they need your presence, not just your signature on a school form. His instinct was to push back. His schedule didn't exactly leave room for nightly dinners, but he could see from her face that this wasn't negotiable. All right, he said quietly. Dinner, every night. Third, Olivia said, her tone softening but still resolute. We rewrite the house rules together. Me, you, and the boys. Not rules written by you alone. Not ones they've never agreed to. They need to feel like their voices matter. Robert let out a breath, feeling the weight of her words settle in. For years, his home had been run like his company, efficient, controlled, but cold. He realized now that the boys had been living under policies, not parenting. Okay, he said, we'll rewrite the rules, together. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The air between them felt different now, less like an argument, more like a truce forming in fragile hands. Olivia studied his face, searching for any sign of insincerity. If I come back, she said finally, I'm doing it for them, not for you. I understand, he replied, though a small part of him wished it could be for both. She gave a brief nod, glancing toward the door where the teenage girls had been moments before. I'll need a week to wrap up things here. A week, he agreed instantly, though the thought of another 7 nights without her made his chest tighten. As Robert left the community center, the afternoon sun was low in the sky, casting long shadows across the cracked pavement. For the first time in a long while, he felt like he was moving towards something better, not just for the twins, but for himself. Back at home, Mrs. Turner was in the kitchen when he walked in. Did you find her? She asked. Yes, he said, a small, almost unnoticeable smile tugging at his lips. She's coming back. The housekeeper's shoulders relaxed with visible relief. Then maybe this house can start feeling like a home again. Robert didn't answer, but as he looked up toward the staircase, the one the boys would soon run down to greet her, he allowed himself to imagine it. The day Olivia was due to return, the Harris house felt different. The morning air carried a quiet anticipation, as if even the walls knew something was about to change. Mrs. Turner bustled in the kitchen, humming softly, a habit she'd dropped months ago. Robert tried to focus on emails in his office, but his eyes kept drifting to the clock. By late afternoon, Lucas and Liam were at the window, restless. Is she really coming back? Lucas asked for the 5th time. Robert crouched down beside them. Yes, he said firmly. She's coming back today. They didn't move from their spot, and when headlights finally turned into the driveway, both boys bolted for the front door. Robert followed, his heart thudding for reasons he couldn't quite name. Olivia stepped out of a modest sedan, wearing a simple blue dress and carrying the same worn leather bag she'd brought on her first day. She barely had time to close the car door before Liam rounded the staircase and ran straight into her arms. Miss Olivia, he shouted, wrapping himself around her waist. She laughed, burying her face in his curls. Lucas followed at a slower pace, but his eyes were bright, and in his hands was a spiral-bound sketchbook. We made you something, Lucas mumbled, holding it out. She knelt to take it, flipping to the first page. It was a wobbly drawing of her standing between Lucas and Liam, a big heart drawn over the house. Above it, in uneven handwriting, were the words, "You stayed even when you left." Her throat tightened. She looked at the boys, then at Robert, who was standing a few feet away. His hands were in his pockets, but there was no mistaking the softness in his eyes. "Thank you," she said to the boys, pulling them both into another hug. "And yes, him staying this time." Inside, Mrs. Turner had prepared a small welcome-back dinner, complete with the boys' favorite spaghetti with extra garlic bread. Robert sat at the table, as promised, his phone nowhere in sight. The boys chatted over each other, telling Olivia every little thing she'd missed in the past week. She listened to every word, smiling, sometimes laughing, and occasionally touching their hands, as if to reassure herself they were really there. After dinner, Olivia went upstairs with the twins to help them get ready for bed. Robert lingered in the doorway, watching her read from a mystery novel. Lucas leaned against her shoulder while Liam traced the illustrations with his finger. It was such a simple scene, yet it filled the room with something he realized had been missing for years. Peace. When the boys were finally asleep, Olivia stepped out into the hallway and found Robert waiting. "They're happy," he said quietly. "They're safe," she corrected. "There's a difference." Robert nodded, accepting the truth in her words. "I'm glad you're back, Olivia." She gave a small smile. "Then let's make sure I never have to leave again." The weeks after Olivia's return felt like the house had been rewired. The boys laughed more, slept better, and even their school reports started to show improvement. Dinners at the table became a steady rhythm, sometimes messy, always lively. Robert kept his promise: no phones, no business calls. He was learning to be present. One evening, as they cleared the table, Olivia noticed a stack of art projects on the counter. The boys had been drawing their friends from school and the friends' struggles. One drawing showed a classmate alone on the playground. Another, a boy hiding behind a tree with tears on his face. Olivia's heart tugged. "These kids, they remind me of Lucas and Liam before," she murmured. Robert glanced over. "You mean before you came?" She didn't answer directly, just kept sorting the papers. What if we could help more kids like them? That night, Olivia sat at the kitchen table long after the boys were asleep, sketching ideas in a notebook. She imagined a place where children could feel safe, supported, and seen a space for emotional care and connection, not just academics. By morning, she had pages of notes. When she presented the idea to Robert, he leaned back in his chair, listening carefully. "A community program?" "Yes," she said. "Not a charity handout. A place that teaches kids how to trust again. Somewhere they can just breathe." He hesitated. "That's a big step. A lot of work." "I know, but I've seen what's possible when someone stays," she replied, her eyes steady. Within weeks, they had rented a small, unused building downtown. Mrs. Turner volunteered to help with logistics. A few of Robert's business contacts offered supplies and small donations. And the boys, they were the most excited, already making welcome posters and brainstorming games. The Harris Carter Youth Center, named at Robert's insistence, opened quietly on a Saturday morning. 10 children showed up, most shy and reserved. Olivia greeted each one by name, sitting on the floor with them to color, play games, or simply talk. By the end of the day, a few had started to smile, but not everyone welcomed the idea. 2 weeks in, an anonymous post appeared online questioning Olivia's qualifications. No degrees, no licenses, just a glorified babysitter. One comment read. Another accused her of using sob stories to get sympathy and money. Robert read the comments in his office, jaw tightening. He wanted to shut it all down before it escalated, but Olivia stopped him. "We can't control what people say. We just keep doing the work." Still, the whispers grew louder. A parent pulled their child out of the program. A local columnist wrote a piece suggesting that good intentions aren't enough when it comes to child welfare. Robert confronted Olivia one evening. "If this keeps up, it could ruin everything we've built." She looked him straight in the eye. "Then, we proved them wrong." The following Monday, Robert arrived at the youth center early, coffee in hand, only to find Olivia in the office, her expression tense. On the desk sat a manila envelope, unmarked. "It was left at the front door," she said, sliding it toward him. Inside were printed screenshots, social media posts, gossip forum threads, and an alleged report claiming that one of the teens at the center, Isabel Bell Parker, had gotten into trouble at school and that Olivia had failed to control her behavior. The tone was venomous, dripping with the suggestion that the center was unsafe. Robert's jaw clenched. "This is targeted. They want to shut us down." Olivia's voice was steady, but her hands betrayed her, fingers gripping the edge of the desk. "And they're going after Belle because she's the easiest one to discredit. She's blunt, she's guarded, and she's had a rough past. They know she's our weak point, at least in the public eye." "Then we don't give them the chance," Robert said firmly. "We go to the press first, tell our side, the truth." Olivia hesitated. "You want to put Belle's story out there?" "That's not just our decision, it's hers." They called Belle into the office. The teenager slouched in, cobalt blue hair framing her face, suspicion in her eyes. When Robert explained the situation, she stared at them both for a long moment. "So, you want people to know about my past?" she asked flatly. "Only if you're comfortable," Olivia said, "and only because it might protect the center. But you have the right to say no." Belle leaned back in her chair, arms crossed. "If it means they stop calling me trouble and start seeing what I'm doing now, then fine, let's tell them." The next day, Olivia and Belle sat side by side in a small studio at the local news station. Belle spoke about her life before the center of the foster homes, the fights, the loneliness, and how Olivia had been the first adult who didn't give up on her. Olivia spoke about the philosophy behind the center: trust before rules, connection before correction. The segment aired that night. By morning, their story had spread beyond the city. Messages poured in, donations, offers to volunteer, and even letters from other teens who had gone through similar struggles. But not all feedback was kind. A national columnist wrote, "Empathy without structure is a recipe for disaster." Questioning Robert's judgment in supporting Olivia, Robert showed her the article, expecting her to be upset. Instead, she simply said, "Let them talk. We'll keep doing the work." And they did. But both knew this wouldn't be the last attack. 2 weeks after the interview, the center was busier than ever. The playroom buzzed with activity art projects, drying on clotheslines, kids huddled over board games, and laughter echoing in the halls. Olivia moved through it all with ease, offering a word of encouragement here, a gentle correction there. Robert watched from the doorway, arms crossed, an unspoken pride on his face. He had seen her handle chaos with patience, handle fear with kindness, and more than anything make children believe they mattered. Late one afternoon, as Olivia was reviewing a stack of journal entries the kids had written, Robert walked in, holding a folder. "I have something for you," he said. She looked up, curious. "Another stack of paperwork." "Not exactly," he replied, setting the folder on the desk. "Go ahead." Inside was an official-looking document. Olivia frowned as she read the first line, and then froze. Co-director of the Harris Carter Youth Center, and beneath it, legal guardian of Lucas and Liam Harris, in the event of Robert Harris's absence. Her eyes snapped up to his. "Robert, what is this?" "It's what you've already been doing," he said. "You've been their guide, their anchor. You've built this center with me. This just makes it official." Her hands trembled slightly as she set the folder down. "I didn't ask for this. I know," he said softly. "But it's what you deserve, and it's what they deserve." For a long moment, she couldn't find her voice. Finally, she managed. "This is a lot. It's trust," he corrected, "and commitment." Before she could respond, Lucas and Liam burst into the office, each holding a paper crown they'd made in arts and crafts. "We made these for you," Liam announced, placing one crookedly on Olivia's head. Robert grinned. "See, they already know who's in charge." That evening, after the boys were in bed, Robert found Olivia on the back porch, wrapped in a blanket. The autumn air was cool, and a fire crackled in the small pit between them. "You're not just changing their lives, Olivia," he said. "You're changing mine." She didn't look at him, but a faint smile tugged at her lips. "Then let's make sure it lasts." It started with a single letter. One of the center's teens, a quiet boy named Jordan, had written about the day he decided not to run away from his foster home. The note was simple, just a few lines, but it carried the weight of survival. Olivia read it twice, her chest tightening. She didn't want it to be tucked away in a drawer and forgotten. She wanted it to be seen. That night, while locking up the center, she found Robert in his office. "I've been thinking," she began, leaning on the doorframe. "We've told happy stories, but we never talk about the storms." He looked up from his laptop. "The storms, the things people survived to get here. The wounds, the setbacks, the nights they almost gave up. Those stories matter just as much as the victories, maybe more." Robert closed the laptop slowly. "What are you suggesting? A space in the center? A gallery? People can submit something that represents what they overcame, a letter, a drawing, a photo. We call it the Hall of Resilience." He raised an eyebrow, a faint smile forming. "A hall for the storms. And for the survivors," she added, "because healing isn't just about the light. It's about learning to live with the shadows." The following week, she shared the idea with the kids and staff. The response was immediate. Belle offered to paint a mural as the backdrop, an enormous tree with deep roots and branches reaching toward the sky. Jordan agreed to have his letter framed as the first piece on the wall. As more contributions arrived, the hall began to take shape: a photo of a girl's first day without self-harm, scars, a pair of worn ballet shoes from a boy who refused to quit dance despite ridicule, a crumpled eviction notice, now stamped paid in full. Each item was a silent but powerful declaration. "I made it." One evening, Robert walked through the nearly finished space, his footsteps echoing softly. He paused at a small drawing of two stick-figure boys holding hands with a taller figure in the middle. Beneath it, in messy handwriting, were the words, "She stayed." He didn't need to ask who had drawn it. When Olivia joined him, he said quietly, "This place, it's more than I imagined." She looked at the wall of stories. "It's not mine, it's theirs." Robert glanced at her, his voice low. "It's ours now." For the first time since the center opened, Olivia felt something deeper than pride. She felt rooted. The one-year anniversary of the Harris Carter Youth Center arrived on a crisp spring afternoon. The lawn outside was dotted with folding chairs, colorful banners, and tables laden with lemonade and fresh-baked cookies. In the center of it all stood a handmade sign painted by the kids, "1 year of staying." Olivia arrived early, helping bell-string fairy lights through the branches of the old oak tree. Lucas and Liam were busy setting up a kids-only fort in the corner of the yard, giggling under a blanket roof. Robert moved between guests, shaking hands with local leaders, agency directors, and even a few skeptical journalists who had come to see for themselves. As the sun began to dip, the guests gathered under the oak tree. Robert stepped forward first. "This center started with an idea," he said, his voice carrying over the crowd, "but it survived because of one person's refusal to give up on my boys, on these kids, and on me. Olivia Carter, you are the heart of this place." A wave of applause broke out, and Olivia's cheeks flushed. She wasn't used to being in the spotlight. But when Lucas and Liam ran up and each grabbed one of her hands, she stood taller. The boys had a surprise of their own. They led her to a small patch of soil near the oak, where a young rosebush waited to be planted. "It's for you," Liam said, "so you'll always be here." Robert handed her a small trowel. "Together," he asked. They knelt side by side, the boys crouching between them, and pressed the roots into the earth. Robert's hand brushed hers as they patted the soil in place. "Every week," he said softly, "we take care of it, even when it's hard." Olivia looked at him, her eyes warm. "Deal." Later, as the guests drifted home and the fairy lights glowed softly in the dusk, Olivia wandered into the Hall of Resilience. She paused in front of Jordan's framed letter, Belle's mural, and finally, the drawing of 2 stick-figure boys, and the words, "She stayed." Robert joined her silently, slipping a hand into his pocket. "Do you realize," he said quietly, "that you've built something that will outlast all of us?" She glanced at him. "Not alone, no," he agreed. "But because you stayed, the rest of us learned how." At that moment, Lucas and Liam came barreling in, each holding one of her hands again. "Come on," Lucas urged. "We're sleeping in the fort tonight." She laughed, letting them drag her toward the yard. Robert followed, watching the 3 of them disappear under the blanket roof, their laughter floating into the night air. And for the first time in years, Robert didn't just feel like he had a house, he felt like he had a home.